In my previous life, I was the owner of a listed company worth over 100 million, yet I lived my whole life in guilt. I had personally driven my wife and daughter to their deaths. Heaven has shown mercy and let me be reborn. The moment I opened my eyes, I was back in the poverty-stricken year of 1970. My wife shrank back in fear at the sight of me, and my daughter had never even eaten a piece of candy. I clung to one belief. In this life, I will make them the women most envied in the whole village. When I opened my eyes and saw my wife Lin Shue's face, I was completely stunned. Wasn't I repenting at my late wife's grave? I had leaned against her tombstone and dozed off for a moment. How was it that when I opened my eyes, she was lying beside me, alive and naked? That face that had filled me with guilt for a lifetime was now right before me. Her skin so fair it seemed to glow. But the bruises all over her body, black and blue, made my heart ache in sharp pangs. Memories flooded into my mind like scenes from a movie. I finally knew for sure. I had been reborn. Reborn back to 1970, when my wife and daughter were still alive. In my previous life, I was a beast. Addicted to gambling, I lost the family's savings and either beat or cursed Lin Shue at every turn. In the end, I drove her to despair, and she hanged herself, while our 3-year-old daughter starved to death. I spent the rest of my life repenting. After retiring from the army, I built everything from scratch and grew a small company until it went public. I had more money than I could ever spend, but the hole in my heart was never filled. I never remarried and in the end died in front of my late wife's grave. Now God has given me another chance. I reached out to touch Lin Shue's face, but as soon as she opened her eyes, she instinctively shrank back, her eyes full of fear. That look stabbed my heart like a knife. I raised my hand and slapped myself twice, hard enough to draw blood from the corner of my mouth. Wife, I'm not human. I've wronged you. I will never treat you like that again. I swear, I will make it up to you and our daughter. Lin Shue said nothing and expressionlessly pulled her clothes over herself. The clothes were too short to cover the bruises on her legs. Her fair, tender thighs were covered in purple and blue marks. It was obvious she had suffered terribly. She had long since gone numb to this routine. Whenever I lost at gambling, I would drink, and after drinking I would torment her, every time for more than half an hour, leaving her wishing she were dead. Then the next day, after sobering up, I would put on a fake show of apologizing, again and again in an endless cycle. I understood her indifference all too well. No one could be hurt and deceived over and over by one person and forgive them just like that. Slowly does it. Wife, you must be hungry. I'll go cook. I searched through the kitchen and found only half a bundle of dried noodles. There was nothing else at all, and meat was out of the question. At that moment, my nose stung with tears. What the hell kind of life was this? I really was no damn good before, making my wife and child suffer like this with me. I cooked the noodles and poured in all the little peanut oil we had left, at least so there'd be a bit of grease. When Lin Shue saw it, her eyes turned red. Why did you use up all the oil? That's enough for a whole month. Are we going to live or not after this? The moment the words left her mouth, she regretted them, and her voice immediately dropped, tinged with tears. I'm not blaming you. It's just that without oil, life will be hard later. But it's okay. I can manage, and Enine can too. The way she spoke so cautiously nearly broke my heart. If the oil's gone, I'll go buy some. From now on, I'll make sure you and our daughter eat meat every day and wear good clothes. I told her to come eat the noodles, but she hesitated and didn't dare pick up her chopsticks. I used to always eat first, and if I wasn't finished, she wasn't allowed to come to the table. Once, I came back late, and she was so hungry she ate first. I gave her a thorough beating for it. From then on, she never dared touch her chopsticks first again. Just then our daughter Enine woke up, rubbed her eyes, came out, and swallowed hard at the sight of the steaming hot noodles on the table. But the way she looked at me was timid, full of fear. I crouched down and tried to make my voice gentler. Ying, be good. Dad made noodles. They smell great. Come eat. Ying looked at the noodles, then at her mom. Lin Shue probably couldn't figure out whether I had really changed or was holding back some new scheme, but her stomach really couldn't take it anymore, so she cautiously came over and sat down. I raised my hand, wanting to serve them some noodles, but Lin Shue got so scared that she picked up the child and backed away. Don't be scared. Don't be scared. I just want to serve you some noodles. No, it's fine. We'll do it ourselves. To put them at ease so they could eat, I simply sat far away and just watched. The two of them ate quickly, and in the end, only a little broth was left. I didn't mind. I picked it up and finished it in one gulp. It wasn't enough to fill me up, but at least it could hold me over for a while. I'm going out for a bit. Tonight I'll get some meat for you. Ying's eyes lit up at once. Mom, did Dad really go buy meat? Lin Shue let out a sigh. Don't you know what kind of person your dad is? He's definitely gone gambling again. She knew it clearly in her heart. As long as I lost money, coming back would mean another round of torment. She had long since gone numb. If not for Ying, she wouldn't have wanted to go on living long ago. When I went out, the cold wind drilled into the cracks of my bones like knives. I had only a single thin layer on, and I was shivering from the cold. The blast of icy wind cleared my head quite a bit. In my previous life, tonight was the last time I saw her. I lost everything at the casino and came back forcing her to hand over the gold earrings from our wedding. She gave them to me, and even gave me an extra sum of money. Like I'd gone mad, I rushed back to the casino and lost every last cent again. When I got home in the middle of the night, what I saw was my 3-year-old daughter starved to death on the bed and my wife hanging from the roof beam. Only later did I find out that day creditors had come to the door and hurled filthy words at her. She completely lost all hope and sold herself for money. That money she gave me was her final test for me, and I destroyed all of it with my own hands. I took a deep breath, my chest feeling like something was about to burst out. Since heaven has given me another chance at life, then everything can still be set right. In my previous life, I was a bastard all my life. In this life, I'll make up for it with my life. Right now, the urgent priority is to get food. There isn't a single grain of rice left at home, and I'm notorious for being lazy and gluttonous, so no one could possibly lend me grain anymore. The only option is to go into the mountains and hunt some game. Nights in the Northeast really can freeze people to death. Fortunately, after I left here in my previous life, I spent more than 10 years in the Border Defense Forces, and I knew the whole set of wilderness survival skills like the back of my hand. Only after retiring did I start a business and take it all the way to a public listing. Let's not talk about the past. Right now, the most important thing is to fill my wife and child's stomachs. When I got to the back mountain, everything was a vast white expanse. Aside from the howling wind, there wasn't a sound. I picked a spot to set a snare. Back when I was in the army, I was the king of soldiers at wilderness survival. One glance was enough for me to tell where rabbits were active. Nearby were wild greens rabbits liked to eat, and at the mouth of a small burrow there were even a few fresh rabbit droppings frozen hard as rocks, which meant this place had game. After setting the trap and scattering some wild greens as bait, I found a concealed spot and crouched there to wait. After nearly half an hour, I was shivering non-stop from the cold, muttering to myself that if nothing showed up soon, I'd really freeze into a popsicle. Just as I was thinking that, a gray rabbit darted out. It had to weigh at least 5 or 6 gene, enough for the 3 of us to have a full meal. The rabbit was extremely wary, stopping and going as it looked around. I held my breath and didn't dare make a sound. Just as it was about to step into the trap, my pupils contracted. A white fox was actually following behind the rabbit, its eyes fixed dead on the rabbit. It had its eye on this prey too. With a bang, the rabbit triggered the trap, the noose tightening around its neck. The more it struggled, the tighter it got, and before long it stopped moving. The white fox didn't quite understand what was going on, but the prey was right in front of it. It edged over and was just about to bite down when I suddenly lunged out and made a face at it. Damn it! I risked my life to catch this. And you think you can just get a free meal here? The fox backed off unwillingly. Then while I wasn't paying attention, it suddenly charged over again, lifted a leg, and farted at me. That smell was fucking rank. Carrying the rabbit down the mountain, I glanced into the depths of the dense forest. I remembered that in my previous life, during the 1970s, quite a few outsiders came around here digging for things everywhere. And only later did I find out that the mountains of the Northeast were full of treasures, wild ginseng, Dendrobium officinale, everywhere. But I hadn't brought any tools today, and I was so hungry my head was spinning, so I'd better go back and stew the rabbit first. By the time I got home, Lin Shui was wearing my tattered shirt and holding the child. When she saw the rabbit hanging from my hand, she was clearly stunned for a moment. I swiftly cleaned the rabbit and put it in the pot to stew. When the aroma drifted out, Yinyin clung to the stove and kept swallowing her saliva, and even Lin Shui couldn't help taking a few extra looks. I've stewed the meat for you. I'm heading out again. Remember to lock the door. Once we've eaten our fill, I've got to hurry up and make some money. We absolutely need padded winter clothes and quilts for the winter. If we delay any longer, someone's really going to freeze to death. I took a shovel and a hoe and headed into the mountains again. Luck was on my side. Not long after going in, I found a wild ginseng plant, and it was in excellent condition, with the rootlets intact. While harvesting the ginseng, I also caught 2 hazel grouse on the side. These stupid things, when they get scared, like to stick their heads into the snow and leave their big asses exposed outside. I just pinned them down and tied their feet. After coming down the mountain, I found a shoulder pole, and first went to the town market to trade the 2 hazel grouse for grain coupons and cloth coupons. In those days, supplies were rationed per person, and coupons were even more scarce than money. If you wanted to buy anything decent, money alone wasn't enough. You needed coupons. Then I went to Rinha traditional medicine shop in town. The owner was an old man. It was said that his ancestors had been imperial physicians, and he was remarkably good at keeping his composure. From as far back as I could remember until I left Yushu village in my previous life, he seemed never to have changed at all. Later I heard he had a prescription that could keep a man hard as a spear, though I never verified it myself. If there's a chance later, I ought to ask around for a friend of mine. I took out the mountain ginseng, and the old man's eyes lit up instantly, but he still put on an act and said, "The age is decent enough, but the appearance is a bit lacking. Some of the rhizome is broken, so it won't fetch much." Without another word, I moved to take it back. Trying to play hard to get with me? Did he really think I was some ignorant mountain bumpkin? The old man quickly stopped me, knowing he couldn't fool me, and gritted his teeth as he said, 10 big unity notes. You won't find a second shop in town offering this price. I didn't haggle. 100 yuan. In an era when a worker's monthly wage was 30 yuan, that was already a large sum of money. There was no way I was going all the way to the county seat to sell it. A round trip would take a whole day, and I didn't have that kind of spare time. After taking the money, I went to a ticket scalper and bought some grain coupons and meat coupons. I also bought my daughter 2 thick cotton-padded jackets. In my previous life, I didn't get the chance to dote on her in time. So in this life, I'm making it all up to her. I bought a big bag of snacks too. My daughter has grown this big without ever even having a single piece of candy. And just thinking about it makes me want to slap myself. I also picked out the most fashionable coat of the time for Lin Shui. She has a good figure and fair skin, so she'd definitely look good in it. Then I bought a quilt, 10 jean of meat, and 10 jean of white flour. Meat was 7 mao per jean, and flour was 1 mao per jean, so altogether it cost 8 yuan. The more I bought, the more things piled up, and the shoulder pole grew heavier and heavier. But I didn't feel tired at all. I used to be a lazy bum who loved to eat and hated to work, someone who couldn't carry a load on his shoulders or lift anything with his hands. But now with dozens, or even over 100 jean weighing on my shoulders, I'd never felt this grounded before. As I walked, I even started humming a song, a tune I'd heard in my previous life. I had no idea whether people of this era would understand it. When I reached my doorway, my older brother Wang Jiangwo happened to be coming out of my room. He caught me and immediately gave me a furious scolding. "You little bastard, did you go gambling again?" "No, I went to town to do odd jobs for people." I lied. My brother looked me up and down. Seeing that I didn't seem to be lying, his expression softened a little. "That's more like it. Live and honest, steady life. Earn a little each day, and things will get better eventually. On the table is a few jean of flour your sister-in-law asked me to bring over. Eat it sparingly. Brother, I can make money now. I bought some meat. How about asking sister-in-law to come over tonight and eat with us?" He waved his hand and left, tossing out a sentence as he went. Living a good life is better than anything. I put the things down and called for Lin Shui to come out. She had been too embarrassed to come out when my brother was here just now, because she didn't have any decent clothes to wear. I handed her the new coat and told her to try it on and see if it fit. Who knew Lin Shui's face would turn pale all at once, and tears began streaming down in big drops. Her voice trembling. "Even a vicious tiger won't eat its own cubs. Will you only be satisfied when you've taken the lives of me and the child?" I froze. "What are you talking about? Stop pretending. Where did all this stuff come from? Where did you get the money? Did you sell Inin's betrothal money?" "Wang Xiangdong, you're not human, you're a beast. For money, you'd even sell your own daughter." She clutched the child tightly and refused to let go, looking like she'd fight anyone to the death if they dared touch her daughter. I quickly took out the rest of the money. "I earned this money. I didn't sell our daughter." When Lin Shui saw that stack of great unity bills, not only was she not reassured, she became even more despairing. Her body swayed, and she nearly fainted. "Even if it wasn't from selling your daughter, where did the money come from? Stolen? A worker only earns 20 or 30 a month, and you made several dozen in one night. If it's not stealing, then what is it? That's a crime. You'd go to jail. If you got caught, what would she and the child do? With the stigma of being a thief's family hanging over them, they'd never be able to hold their heads up for the rest of their lives." I could tell she didn't believe me at all, and I was so anxious I was breaking out in sweat. I was someone who had been a king of soldiers and worked at a listed company. What situation hadn't I seen? But faced with the distrust in my own wife's eyes, I truly panicked. Gritting my teeth, I slapped myself hard twice more. My voice hoarse. No matter how rotten I, Wang Xiangdong, may be, I would never sell my own daughter, much less steal or rob. Wife, I promise you, the money is clean. I got it by going into the mountains and digging up valuable wild ginseng to exchange for it. At this moment, my pant legs were covered in mud, and there were bits of grass stuck in my hair. Anyone could tell I had just come out of the mountains. Lin Shui stared into my eyes for a long time. I have a bad habit. When I lie, I unconsciously avoid her gaze. But this time I didn't. She seemed to believe me, and that despair in her eyes slowly faded away. She took the money, gripping it so tightly her fingers turned white, then turned around and went back into the room to hide it, spending half an hour before she finally found a good hiding place. By the time she came out, I had already set the food on the table. Stir-fried pork, stewed ribs, braised pork. The fragrance filled the whole room. When Lin Shui saw a table full of meat dishes, her eyes turned resentful. Are we not going to live anymore? It's not New Year or any holiday. What family eats several meat dishes in one meal? The moment the words left her mouth, she regretted them, and her little face turned pale. And she quickly added in a low voice, Sorry, I didn't mean to criticize you. I held her hand. Her hand was very soft, but it was trembling slightly. I wasn't angry. I made you and the child suffer too much before. From now on, we'll eat meat every day, meat at every meal. I, Wang Xiangdong, mean what I say. Just then Yining came running in, her little pigtails bobbing. Her little face chapped from the cold, but she was smiling so happily, holding the little pellet drum the neighbor uncle had given her, shaking it so it went dong-dong. I scooped her up and set her on the chair. I picked up the softest, most tender rib for her. Yining stuffed her mouth full, her cheeks puffed out and her eyes curved into crescents. So delicious. Lin Shui and I just watched our daughter eat like that. Neither of us could bear to pick up our chopsticks. Tomorrow I still need to go into the mountains again and see if I can dig up a few more things, I said. Lin Shui hesitated for a moment, then gathered her courage and said, How about finding a proper job instead? You could earn a few dimes a day. It may not be much, but at least it's steady work. The mountains are too dangerous. A few days ago, a hunter went in and was carried off by wolves. They couldn't even find the body. Back when she was being tormented, she had countless times wished I would die out there, so that no one would torment her anymore. But now, her feelings seemed to have changed a little. I stroked her hair, the strands smooth and silky. Okay, I'll listen to you. In a few days, I'll go into town and see if there's any suitable work. Lin Shui blushed bright red at my sudden intimacy. She lowered her head, lightly stirring her chopsticks in her bowl, not knowing what she was thinking. After dinner, I cleaned up and washed the bowls and chopsticks. Watching me bustle about, Lin Shui didn't know whether to stand or sit, clearly still not used to this abnormal behavior. When we went to sleep that night, I turned over and draped an arm over her. Her body immediately stiffened, her breathing grew lighter, and she didn't even dare breathe hard. The next morning, when I woke up, I was holding my soft wife in my arms, and she still wasn't awake. Her face was right in front of me, with long eyelashes and skin so delicate it seemed you could pinch water out of it. I was a hot-blooded young man in my early 20s, so all the natural reactions were there, and my throat felt dry as fire. But the moment I lowered my head to kiss her, I felt her body go stiff, even trembling slightly. She was afraid, resisting. I stopped. If it had been the beast I used to be, I wouldn't have cared whether she was willing or not, only about satisfying myself. But now it was different. What I wanted was her wholehearted consent. I rolled out of bed, lowered my head for a look, and could only tell my little brother to bear with it. By the time I got ready and headed out, Lin Shui had already prepared some dry rations, wrapped them in a cloth bundle, and handed them to me. Even though she said she didn't want me going into the mountains, she still packed food for me. I thought it was because she cared about me, and I felt pretty pleased with myself. But that wasn't it. She was simply afraid of being beaten. Once before, when I was going on a long trip, she forgot to prepare dry rations in advance. And when I came back, I beat her badly. From then on, she never dared forget again. In her eyes, preparing dry rations for me had nothing to do with caring about me. It was just an instinct for self-protection. Before Wang Xiangdong entered the mountains, he made a detour to the old hunter's home in the neighboring Laowang village. During dinner last night, he had taken Lin Shui's words to heart. The mountains really were dangerous, so he needed to find some kind of weapon for self-defense. Old Hunter Li had once been the mountain guardian of this area. When he got old and could no longer handle the work, he came down from the mountain to retire. He had never married, so no one had inherited that hunting rifle of his. Wang Xiangdong's purpose on this trip was to borrow that hunting rifle. Being a mountain guardian was also a dangerous job. It required not only extraordinary courage, but also strength far beyond ordinary people, as well as precise marksmanship. When he arrived, he directly explained his purpose and said he wanted to borrow the hunting rifle in Old Li's hands. Old Li was reclining in a lounge chair, basking in the sun. He merely glanced at Wang Xiangdong, then closed his eyes again, uninterested in paying him any attention. Wang Xiangdong set the meat and grain to one side, understanding that Old Li looked down on him and that he had to show some real skill. He took the initiative to propose a wager. If he could hit the persimmons on the tree with all 3 shots, Old Li would lend him the hunting rifle, but if even one shot missed, then all this meat and grain would belong to Old Li. Only then did Old Li take an interested look at him and say disdainfully, "Young man, what big talk?" Without wasting any words, Old Li fetched the hunting gun he had treasured for many years. It was an old-fashioned single-barrel shotgun that could only be loaded 1 shell at a time. Although it had not been used for a long time, he would often take it out for maintenance to ensure that when it was needed again, it would not fail him. The moment Wang Xiangdong took the shotgun, his eyes changed. It was as if he had returned to his time in the Special Operations Unit. He gently stroked the gun stock, as if greeting an old friend he had not seen for many years. He took a deep breath, loaded it, took aim, and pulled the trigger. In one smooth motion, bang! A persimmon on the tree shattered at the sound. Then 2 more shots in quick succession, and all 3 persimmons were hit. Old Li sprang up from his recliner, all his earlier contempt and disdain gone, and exclaimed in shock, "What marksmanship?" Wang Xiangdong said, "So now you can lend me the shotgun, right?" Old Li still shook his head, and Wang Xiangdong frowned. Old Li spoke again. It was not impossible for him to use this shotgun, but only if he agreed to become the mountain guardian for several villages. Then he would be able to use the shotgun legally and properly. And as a mountain guardian, he would also earn a salary of 10 yuan a month. Wang Xiangdong thought that sounded fine. There was money to be made, and more importantly, he could legally use the shotgun, so if it was ever looked into later, with this status, he could avoid a lot of trouble. Wang Xiangdong gladly agreed, and Old Li solemnly handed the shotgun to him, as if passing on a legacy, entrusting the heavy responsibility of protecting the villagers. To Wang Xiangdong, "In a few days, I will help you apply through the brigade and get your status confirmed. When the time comes, the brigade will send you 10 yuan in wages every month." Wang Xiangdong left with the shotgun on his back. Old Li had only 2 boxes of ammunition left, and Wang Xiangdong was thinking of going to the black market another day to get some bullets. There was too little of this stuff. Without it, he felt insecure. Wang Xiangdong was keen on going into the mountains to hunt game and dig up valuable goods because he wanted to complete his primitive accumulation before the future reform and opening up, so he would have enough capital to earn his first pot of gold in the sweeping tide of reform. One step ahead every step of the way. Only by being the first to complete primitive accumulation could he surpass those second-generation elites with resources and connections at the fastest speed. Things like ginseng and dendrobium were relatively hard to come by, especially a big prize like ginseng, which could only be encountered by chance and not sought. If you came across it, that meant you were lucky. But game was still comparatively easy to obtain. As long as one dared to enter the mountains and was familiar with the habits of wild game, it was still easy to come across some. And games such as wild rabbits, roe deer, and masked palm civets were quite sought after by city people. In this era, when grain and meat were rationed by head count, this wild game became an indispensable delicacy for the rich to satisfy their cravings. Stepping through the thick snow, the hot breath Wang Xiangdong exhaled was clearly visible. Suddenly his gaze sharpened, and at the same time he skillfully raised the shotgun and took aim. Not far away, a roe deer foraging for food appeared on a small dirt slope. It was not small in size, probably around 30 jin. However, just as Wang Xiangdong was about to pull the trigger, a silver-white fox appeared and startled the roe deer away. Not only that, the white fox bared its teeth at Wang Xiangdong, as if in provocation. Wang Xiangdong was furious and directly pulled the trigger, intending to blow the thing away. But it was as if the fox had anticipated this and slipped away in advance, and the shot missed. Wang Xiangdong frowned. This was bizarre. In his previous life, his shooting skills had ranked among the very best, and he could hit even moving targets every time. Yet this time, a fox had escaped him. What happened in the next few encounters made Wang Xiangdong even more exasperated. Every time he came across prey, that fox would appear and scare it away, causing him to return empty-handed each time. He did not get so much as a single hare all morning. But Wang Xiangdong was not discouraged. Having come out of the Special Operations Unit, he had long since forged an iron-like will and patience. At this moment, his gaze fell on a patch covered with weeds. His eyes flickered slightly. Based on his wilderness survival experience, those weeds had been deliberately laid there by someone, most likely to cover a trap. Just then, a wild rabbit appeared near the trap. That annoying fox also happened to show up, letting out a mocking chuckle at Wang Xiangdong. But he did not fly into a rage from embarrassment, instead quietly forming a plan in his mind. With a sudden darting movement, He moved to intercept the fox along its intended escape route, forcing it to change direction. Several shots in a row cut off its path of escape. The white fox was startled and fled in panic, clearly not expecting that the human's target this time was it. Shocked and furious, it let out sharp, squeaking cries, as if declaring war. However, the next second, a painful whimper came from its mouth. Unsurprisingly, one of its paws stepped right into the hunter's trap. It was an animal trap. Once caught in it, escaping was very difficult. Wang Xiangdong slowly approached. The white fox's fur stood completely on end, clearly terrified to the extreme. I took one rabbit from you, and you scared off my prey several times, so let's call it even. You and I can be considered acquainted through conflict. This time I'll help you out of trouble, and from now on we'll keep out of each other's way. What do you think? Wang Xiangdong stared at the white fox as he spoke. He could have blown the fox away with a single shot, but there was something different in the fox's eyes that made him feel otherwise. Plus, there had always been legends in the Northeast about Hu Santainai. Even though he was an atheist, at this moment he no longer had the desire to kill. The white fox seemed to understand his words and remained silent. After Wang Xiangdong freed it, it quickly ran off into the distance. When it reached a small hill, it paused, turned back, and gave Wang Xiangdong a long, deep look, then disappeared into the mountain forest. Next, something miraculous happened. Wang Xiangdong's hunting went surprisingly smoothly. In less than 2 hours, he had already bagged a silly roe deer, several plump wild rabbits, and went down the mountain fully loaded. Even Wang Xiangdong himself couldn't help muttering. Could that thing really have been an incarnation of Hu Santainai? Did letting her go really make her bless me with a great hunt? This absurd thought flashed through his mind, and Wang Xiangdong shook his head with a smile. He was more inclined to believe it was due to his own good luck and accurate marksmanship. Lin Shui was stewing meat at home. According to Wang Xiangdong's instructions, she had to stew 3 jin of meat and wait for him to come back at noon to eat. In this era when people could barely even fill their stomachs, who would eat 3 jin of meat in one meal? Let alone 3 jin. Even in a month, one might not get to eat 3 liang of meat. But though it pained her, she still did as told. If she dared disobey, she would get a brutal beating. So she might as well obediently do as she was told and put the meat on to stew. That way, she and Enin could at least get some soup as well. The aroma of meat filled the entire kitchen. Enin drooled with craving, chasing after her mother asking when the meat would be ready, saying Enin's tummy was hungry. Exhausted in both body and mind, Lin Shui couldn't help but show a trace of gentle warmth when she saw Enin's cute little face. Soon. Enin, wait a little longer. Let's wait for Daddy to come back and eat together, okay? Enin nodded vaguely, though drool still kept running from the corner of her mouth. Just then, someone came to the courtyard gate. Third brother's wife. Hearing the familiar loud voice, Lin Shui frowned slightly. It was second sister-in-law Yang Zuehua, who knew what she had come for. She immediately lifted the door curtain and went out. She didn't want her to smell the meat in the kitchen, but it was already too late. As soon as Yang Zuehua stepped into the courtyard, her nose, as keen as a dog's, twitched instinctively, and she caught the long-missed aroma of meat. Stewed meat, at that. Her eyes lit up. The third brother's family was stewing meat, and without even waiting for third brother's wife to invite her, she headed straight for the kitchen. She happened to run right into third brother's wife coming out. "Oh, third brother's wife, stewing meat in the kitchen, huh?" Yang Zuehua said. Without waiting for Lin Shui to react, she went into the kitchen herself, lifted the pot lid, and saw a whole pot full of meat. Smelling the aroma, she couldn't help swallowing. This has to be several jin of meat, right? Looking across the whole Yushu village, family by family, for 10 days or half a month, not a trace of meat could be found. They were really poor as dirt. Hungry too, truly hungry. Seeing such a big pot of meat, Yang Zuehua's eyes lit up, and she wished she could scoop some up and stuff herself on the spot. Then when she looked up and saw a large rack of ribs hanging from the beam, Yang Zuehua widened her eyes in shock. Third brother struck it rich, huh? No, that couldn't be right. How could a rotten gambler possibly get rich? He must have been up to some crooked business. Her eyes darted as she made up her mind. Third brother's wife, your family seems pretty flush lately, huh? Money's just pouring in. Did third brother do something shady? But don't worry, second sister-in-law keeps a tight mouth. I definitely won't tell anyone outside. Family looks out for family. It's just that those 2 little brats in my house are so hungry they really can't take it anymore. They're craving meat like crazy. I don't mean anything else by it. I just want to borrow 2 jin of meat from you to take back and eat. I promise I'll have your second brother pay you back another day. Second sister-in-law, this meat was earned fair and square by Xiangdong. There's nothing crooked about it, and we're not afraid of you telling others. As for borrowing meat, You'll have to ask Xiangdong. I, a woman, can't make that decision. Besides, second sister-in-law, did you forget that some time ago you borrowed eggs and noodles from our family and still haven't returned them? And a few months ago, did you also forget about taking a bottle of soy sauce and a bag of salt? At the mention of borrowing things, Lin Shui was full of anger. Second sister-in-law always said she was borrowing, but she never once planned to return anything. In the past, she had also mentioned to Wang Xiangdong that they shouldn't lend things out anymore. Their own family could barely manage, and someone like second sister-in-law just loved taking advantage of small bargains. Once she borrowed something, she never brought up returning it. But the moment she spoke up, Wang Xiangdong gave her a brutal beating that night. This time, things had only just started to get a little better. As long as they were a bit careful, they might even have a good new year this year. So this time, she gathered her courage and refused to lend anything out no matter what. Even if Wang Xiangdong beat her again, she would still protect this meat, so that Yining would have something good to eat. The child was still growing. How long had it been since she'd eaten meat? Yang Cuihua's face instantly turned ugly. She hadn't expected that third brother's wife, usually so timid and submissive, would actually dare to tell her no. Had third brother not beaten her lately? Or had he not beaten her hard enough? She actually dared talk to her sister-in-law like that. She really had no sense of respect. She looked around, and third brother wasn't home. Probably out gambling again. But Yang Cuihua didn't waste words with her. What Lin Shui said didn't matter anyway. Once third brother came back from gambling, there would naturally be hell to pay for her. Fine, when third brother gets back, I'll come ask him myself. When the time comes, third brother's wife, you'd better not stop me. After saying that, Yang Cuihua swayed her big hips and left. This woman was just past 30, with a voluptuous figure. Her looks weren't all that remarkable, but her body was unbelievably soft. People all said that Wang Jianjun, who had married Yang Cuihua, was really living the good life. Touching those soft, cushy parts every day, he'd probably wake up from his dreams smiling. Especially in winter, after coming back from work, if he reached his hand toward his wife, it was wonderfully warm. It's just that Yang Cuihua had a fiery temper, and Wang Jianjun, henpecked as he was, might not even dare to reach his hand in. Some idle busybodies even speculated that, given Yang Cuihua's temperament, even when doing that kind of thing, she had to be the one in charge. Wang Jianjun was purely unnecessary. Of course, this was all speculation. No one knew how the couple did things. After all, it was all behind closed doors. Yang Cuihua returned home fuming. In the yard, a thin, frail man was weaving a winnowing basket. Seeing his wife like this, he couldn't help but feel puzzled. Hadn't she gone to third brother's place to ask third brother's wife to help with the work? What's wrong? Third brother's wife refused? Wang Jianjun's face darkened as he asked. What? Third brother's wife wouldn't help with the work? Yang Cuihua said nothing. After getting home, she picked up a large earthen jar and poured herself some hot water from the old thermos, drinking it down before finally calming herself. I didn't bring up the work, but I saw meat stewing at third brother's house, and there were several jin of ribs hanging from the beam. I asked her to lend me a few jin. It's not like I wouldn't return them, but she said she had to wait until third brother came back. Even worse, she actually brought up what happened before, saying that our family had never returned the things we borrowed before. Would we really be short of her a little bit? It's just that we don't have the money to pay her back yet. Wang Jianjun hesitated, feeling a little guilty. What third brother's wife said does make sense. We've borrowed things from her and never paid them back. It's only natural that she wouldn't lend to us. Why get so angry? At worst, we just won't eat that stewed meat. It's not like we're lacking a piece of meat. Listen to yourself. Is that even something a human would say? You're not even half as aware as third brother. Whenever he hears that his own family needs something, he sends it over without a second word. If you want to eat meat, you're hopeless to count on. You useless thing. Yang Cuihua was so angry that those two things of hers almost shoved into Wang Jianjun's face. The more she thought about it, the angrier she got, glaring at Wang Jianjun. Too lazy to say more to him. With his habit of finishing in 2 minutes, she couldn't expect him to suddenly grow a spine. Once third brother came back, as long as he knew about this, he'd most likely bring the meat over himself. However, speaking of third brother, Yang Cuihua inexplicably flushed a little. Not only was he handsome, but his 1.8-meter height was beyond reproach. Even more tantalizing was that no one knew what third brother had eaten growing up. They were all one family, yet he alone was extraordinarily gifted. Thinking of this, Yang Cuihua grew a little hot and restless, glanced at her useless husband, and told him to go back to the room. Wang Xiangdong returned with a full load. At home, Lin Shui had been holding Yining, nearly starving and dozing off. The moment she saw him come back, she woke Yining up. Daddy's back, We can eat meat now. Ining woke up groggily. When she saw Wang Xiangdong, she was still subconsciously a little afraid, clearly because he had left quite a shadow on her before. Lin Shui looked at the silly roe deer weighing dozens of jin and was a little shocked. Did he really hunt all of this by himself? When did he learn how to hunt? Wang Xiangdong put down the game and looked at the stewed meat, his heart warming. What more could one ask for in life? A wife and children on a warm Kong. Going out to work and coming back to a hot meal. This was the greatest happiness. Wang Xiangdong went in to wash his hands, took the initiative to dish out the meat, and then called his wife and daughter to eat. He deliberately picked a piece of streaky pork, half lean and half fat, for each of them. It was soft, tender, and full of flavor. And with one bite, your mouth filled with rich juices, pure happiness. After thanking Daddy, Ining couldn't help but take big bites of the meat. The little girl's skyward pigtails bobbed up and down, radiating happiness. Wang Xiangdong let out a long, satisfied breath. God knows what he had gone through in the mountains and forests. In the freezing cold, he went into the mountains to hunt, gripping the icy gunstock in his hands and still gritting his teeth to persevere. Also that his wife and daughter could have meat at every meal. At this moment, he noticed his wife staring at him blankly and couldn't help but wonder if there was something on his face. Wang Xiangdong frowned and said, "Not eating? Is your appetite bad?" Lin Shui was so frightened that she quickly picked up her bowl and shoveled 2 bites into her mouth. In the past, at times like this, if she dared to dawdle any longer, he really would directly grab it with his hand and stuff it straight into her mouth. After being married for so long, he had never once shown her any tenderness. She had wanted to tell him about second sister-in-law coming over just now to borrow some meat. But second sister-in-law's haughty attitude had made her very uncomfortable, so she wanted to tell her husband about it and have someone to rely on. But a single sentence from Wang Xiangdong made her tremble with fear. And Wang Xiangdong had always sided with his elder brother and second brother's families. He had never stood up for her. This time, with second sister-in-law wanting to borrow meat, presumably he wouldn't object either. It wasn't that she was craving meat and had to eat it herself, but she just felt sorry for Ining. How long had it been since the child had eaten meat? Life had only just started to seem a little hopeful, and now they were going to hand it over to someone else. Thinking of this, all the suffering she had endured these past days turned into tears, and she couldn't help but let them fall. Hey. When Wang Xiangdong saw his wife suddenly burst into tears, he instantly became flustered, put down his bowl and chopsticks, and went over, wanting to wipe her tears away, but his wife turned her head and ignored him. "What's wrong? Why are you crying? Are you feeling unwell somewhere?" Wang Xiangdong said softly. Lin Shui looked at him through tear-filled eyes and shook her head. "Then what happened? Tell me. If anyone bullied you, I'll break his damn legs. No one gets to bully my wife." Lin Shui hesitated for a moment, but in the end she still mustered up the courage, bit her lip, and said, "Second sister-in-law saw that we were eating meat and wanted to borrow a few jin, and her mouth was filthy too, saying you'd gone down the wrong path. I didn't want to lend it. Too much." Wang Xiangdong's face darkened, and he slapped the table hard. He knew second sister-in-law's temperament. Since Lin Shui had refused her, there was no way she'd let it go nicely. She definitely must have mocked and bullied his wife. Lin Shui was so scared that she stood up, thinking Wang Xiangdong was angry and was going to hit her. Shrinking back, she explained in a tearful voice, "Don't hit me. I'll lend it to her, okay? It's not like I'm being greedy myself. I just feel sorry for Ining. In 3 years, the number of times she's eaten meat can be counted on one hand. I just want her to eat a little more meat. What's wrong with that? When has second sister-in-law's family ever remembered ours when they eat meat? Why should we lend it to her just because she asks?" Wang Xiangdong froze. As he took a step toward her, Lin Shui backed away again and again in fright. Wang Xiangdong pulled her forcefully into his arms, slowly soothing her stiff body until it relaxed. "Silly girl, what I meant was that second sister-in-law has gone too far. If you don't want to lend it to her, then don't. It's not a big deal. If she dares to throw her weight around in front of you, she borrowed quite a few things from our family before, too. Some other day we'll make her return them all together, so she knows that no matter who she provokes, she mustn't provoke you." In his arms, Lin Shui felt his strong heartbeat. For the first time, she felt protected. Subconsciously, she lifted her head and looked at that familiar, yet unfamiliar face. She realized she was starting to see through the man before her less and less. In the 3 years of their marriage, aside from being immersed in gambling all day long, he had never done a single proper thing. He had been a complete and utter loafer. Yet all of a sudden he had become thrifty, devoted to the family, and capable. Anyone would be shocked by such a change. She even had the absurd thought that Wang Xiangdong might be possessed. Otherwise, how could he have changed so much? Yet at this moment, The pitiful-looking wife in Wang Xiangdong's arms was gazing at him, and that irresistibly delicate, lovable look of hers stirred a powerful desire in him. He couldn't help but kiss her. Lin Shui melted under that fervent and forceful invasion. Her mind crashed into a blank, empty state. Her body, which had been stiff, turned soft and limp, hanging weakly on Wang Xiangdong. Wang Xiangdong directly had his wife wrap herself around him, telling Yining to eat the meat outside by herself. Daddy and Mommy have a bit of urgent business to take care of, so Yining should eat nicely on her own. Soon, from the room came his wife's trembling voice, both shy and hard to describe. Don't touch there. At this moment, the second brother's wife came out of the house cursing under her breath. It was unclear whether Wang Jianjun's performance had failed to satisfy her, or because after waiting for quite a while, she still hadn't seen the third brother bring over the meat, so she got angry. But seeing that it was getting dark, and there was still no dinner in sight, she had promised a hu and heir who stewed meat for the evening, so she couldn't go back on her word. It looked like she'd have to go herself. If she showed up in person, the third brother would surely present the meat himself. Full of confidence, Yang Sohua swayed her big hips and headed toward the third brother's house. As soon as she arrived at the third brother's house, she smelled the aroma of meat. She couldn't wait to glance at the table. Good heavens, they had already started eating. Little Yinin's mouth was glistening with grease, and Yang Sohua couldn't resist taking a big bite herself. That long-missed soft, glutinous texture. Before she even had time to chew it in her mouth, she gave a strong slurp and it went straight down to her stomach. Her face instantly filled with satisfaction. Then she began commenting again. This meat is still a bit lacking. If it had been stewed a little longer, it would have been even better. Not seeing the two of them, Yang Suihua went straight to the kitchen and took the meat. Anyway, even if the third brother found out, he wouldn't be angry. Just before leaving, she suddenly heard a burst of suppressed, shy moaning coming from the room. Yang Suihua grew curious and couldn't help peeking through the window. The next second, she opened her mouth wide in shock. Good heavens, how could it be that big? Yang Suihua watched for a while, then left the third brother's house in a daze. In those days, when television and entertainment were not widespread, especially in a poor rural place like this, the only entertainment at night was playing cards on the Kong with one's own wife. It was also why every household in that era had so many little children. Yang Suihua couldn't help showing a look of envy. Heaven knew what kind of heavenly life Lin Shui lived every night. If only that deadbeat at home had even half of the third brother's stamina. Even if she were beaten every day, she'd be willing. 2 hours later, Lin Shui only felt that her little face was scaldingly hot. It was so red it looked as if blood might drip from it. At this moment, the young woman's shyness was on full display. She swore that after being married for so long, that was the first time she had felt the joy of being a woman. Before, he had always started roughly, with no regard for her feelings at all. Even after it was over, he never said a single caring word. But this time was completely different. She couldn't put that feeling of shyness into words, but it truly felt wonderful. After comforting his wife, Wang Xiangdong got out of bed. His sturdy, well-built body appeared before Lin Shui's eyes, making the tips of her ears turn red again. After Wang Xiangdong got dressed, he greedily gave her body a squeeze. Lin Shui trembled, and her fair, rosy little face reddened as if blood might drip from it. By now, night had already fallen. After Lin Shui got dressed, she lit the kerosene lamp. She began doing some needlework to help support the family. If she worked hard, she could make 4 or 5 yuan a month, enough to cover various daily necessities. There was no electric light at home. In Yushu village, even if people could run electric wires and install lights, very few actually used them. Using them meant one more household expense. Electricity cost 2 cents per kilowatt hour. If they used dozens of kilowatt hours in a month, how could they keep living like that? So what if it was a little dark at night? It was better than wasting money for nothing. Generally, women who did needlework at night mostly worked close to the kerosene lamp and just made do. The only bad thing was that it was easy to end up nearsighted. A lot of the aunties, though not even old yet, could hardly see anymore. At that moment, Lin Shui heard Wang Xiangdong say something that made her heart pound in fear. Wife, tomorrow I'll ask the village chief to find someone to help string electrical wires. And we'll use electric lights too. Huh. To be honest, Lin Shui was shocked. How could he have such an idea? Who gave him the nerve to use electric lights at night? Did he really think money was blown in by the wind? Lin Shui glanced at Wang Xiangdong and said cautiously, "No need, right? I think this is quite good as it is." Suddenly, a large hand fell on her shoulder, frightening her delicate body into stiffening. After the pleasure just now, she had subconsciously thought he had truly changed. But once reason returned and faced reality, she remembered that he was someone who did as he said and had never liked anyone to defy him. Lin Shui tried hard to calm herself and said, "I was only giving a suggestion. If you really want to string electrical wires, then go ahead." Compared with being beaten, Lin Shui felt that stringing electrical wires was easier to accept. At worst, she would just do a bit more handicraft work at night and try to cover the whole of the electricity bill. Wang Xiangdong looked into her eyes gently and assured her, "Don't worry. If I can get electrical wires installed, then I can afford to use electric lights and pay the electric bill. I said I would let you mother and daughter live a good life that everyone envies. This is only the first step. After a while, when I've saved enough money, I'll build a new house too and try to move in before the new year." After saying that, he told his wife to take their daughter to sleep early, while he was going to ask Oldly where he could get some bullets. He had used up all the bullets on that trip into the mountains. Having been a hunter for decades, Oldly surely had his own connections. When he went, he also brought a pheasant for the solitary Oldly. The reason he had been able to gain so much and felt confident when entering the mountains was thanks to the man's willingness to lend him the gun. When he arrived, the kerosene lamp was lit in Old Li's living room. He was eating. Wang Xiangdong lowered his head for a look and thought, "Oh ho, living alone, yet he's doing pretty well." A plate of peanuts and a bottle of beidakang. Beidakang was a sauce aroma baijiu and was quite popular among drinkers in the 1960s and 1970s. There was also a dish of stewed meat, obviously what he had brought over during the day. Wang Xiangdong explained why he had come. Old Li took a sip of liquor, picked up a peanut, and chewed it in his mouth, crisp and crunchy. One couldn't help but envy him. Old Li was already well into his 70s, yet his teeth were still so good. Old Li contentedly wiped his mouth and laughingly cursed. "You brat treated bullets like that thing in your crotch, firing them off bang 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 like they cost nothing." Bullets were precious and hard to come by. In his decades of hunting, he usually saved whenever he could and would never fire unless he was 90% sure. Wang Xiangdong mentioned the matter of encountering the white fox, and Old Li frowned. "It is a bit strange, but it probably isn't such a coincidence that you ran into the legendary Hu Santainai." Old Li reassured Wang Xiangdong. This kid was the successor he had just found, so he absolutely couldn't scare him off. Fortunately, Wang Xiangdong had always been very bold. Even if it was Hu Santainai, if it dared ruin his good thing again, he'd still blow it away with one shot. Old Li got his aged body to its feet and went back to his room to fetch a yellowed sheet of letter paper, as well as a wolf fang pendant. He told Wang Xiangdong to go to a general store on Jimin Street in town to find a man named Lu Gua, and upon seeing this wolf fang pendant, he would naturally sell bullets to him. Also, if Wang Xiangdong had any scarce mountain goods in the future, he could sell them to him as well. With this wolf fang pendant, the price given to Wang Xiangdong would definitely be fair. Wang Xiangdong said nothing and solemnly bowed to Old Li. The wolf fang pendant must be very precious, equivalent to a kind of inherited token in ancient times. Old Li waved his aged figure's hand, signaling him to sit down and have a drink with him. He was old now and no longer went into the mountains to hunt, so he had no mountain goods anymore, and few people came by the house to visit. Sometimes loneliness was inevitable. Wang Xiangdong poured a drink for Old Li and filled his own cup as well. "Uncle, from now on I'll call you Uncle. When I have time, I'll definitely come by often to drink with you. This cup, I toast to you." As soon as he finished speaking, he downed it in one gulp. The fiery beidakang liquor rolled down his throat, making Wang Xiangdong let out a long breath. Refreshing. Old Li looked at the bold young man with gratification, thinking he had judged him right. A man's drinking manners reveal his character. This was a reliable man. From now on, the safety of several villages would depend on him. At 5 o'clock the next morning, Wang Xiangdong got up from his warm bed. He had to leave early for town. The trip would take more than 2 shirtchen, and he couldn't afford to miss the morning market. Lin Shui was awake too. Propping herself up, she reminded Wang Xiangdong that the dry rations and water she had prepared for him last night were on the table, and told him to remember to bring them. But when Wang Xiangdong, now dressed, turned to look at his wife, he froze. When they had gone to sleep last night, his wife had originally been wearing her undergarments, but he had found them bothersome and forcibly taken them off her. Now his half-asleep wife seemed not to realize she was completely naked. Lin Shui sensed his beast-like gaze and finally belatedly realized something was wrong, shyly retreating back under the covers, as if afraid he would linger and refuse to leave, and said, "Hurry and get going." Wang Xiangdong smiled silently. He did not lose himself in this gentle trap, taking the dry rations and water and shouldering the game he had hunted yesterday. He set out for town through the wind and snow. Wild game from the mountains was in high demand. That foolish roe deer weighing over 30 jin was bought by a wealthy family, Supposedly, there was a baby's 1-month celebration in the household, and they were short one substantial main dish, so the foolish roe deer was just right. After selling everything, he made a total of a little over 40 yuan. Roe deer meat was more sought after than pork, selling for over 1 yuan per gene. After putting the money away, Wang Xiangdong carried his load to the black market on Juman Street, looking for the boss called Lu Gua to replenish his ammunition. He couldn't forget about that. After asking around for the address, he found the place. On the surface, it was a general store, selling a bit of everything. Wang Xiangdong asked the old man lying in a chair whether he was boss Lu Gua. The latter lifted his eyelids and glanced at him, then casually asked, "Young man, what is it?" He directly took out the wolf fang pendant Old Li had given him. Wang Xiangdong understood that for things like weapons, without an introduction from an acquaintance, they simply wouldn't give him the time of day, so he decided to get straight to the point. The old man saw the wolf fang pendant symbolizing a hunter and abruptly sat up, somewhat uncertain. "Is this Old Li's?" Wang Xiangdong nodded and said, "It is indeed." The old man suddenly understood. Since this item had been given to the young man before him, it meant that rifle had been passed down to him as well. Considering his age, Old Li was already over 70, so it was only normal that he could no longer enter the mountains. Wang Xiangdong explained his purpose. He wanted 100 rounds for that hunting rifle. The old man said that old-style hunting rifle bullets were hard to find, so the price was a bit high, 1 mao per round, so 100 rounds would be 10 yuan. But since he had taken over the job of mountain guardian, it would also be fine if he used something else to trade for the bullets. Wang Xiangdong's heart stirred slightly. That was even better. He asked the old man what he wanted, and when he learned he wanted a 300-gene wild boar, Wang Xiangdong was surprised. Ordinary people couldn't finish such a large wild boar. The old man said his son would be taking a wife in a few days, with 100 banquet tables, and he was worrying about what to serve. If he could get a big wild boar, then they could make a big stewed dish. "Young man, can you get it?" The old man said to Wang Xiangdong. "As long as you can get it, I'll give you these 100 rounds for free. And don't worry, I'll also buy the wild boar at market price, absolutely fair." "No problem." Wang Xiangdong nodded emphatically and, while he was at it, flattered the old man a little. He said, "Uncle Li told me that when trading with you, I can be completely at ease. You definitely won't cheat me." The old man laughed heartily and said that settled it, telling him to take the bullets back and that he would await his arrival. Wang Xiangdong took the bullets and headed home. He had not agreed to it blindly. He understood the habits of wild boars. As long as he had enough patience, he could find their tracks and wait for a chance to make his move. It was just that this trip would probably take 2 or 3 days. What he feared was that his wife would worry. On the way back, he bought another dozen or so gene of meat and another dozen or so gene of flour. When he got up this morning, he had discovered that the ribs hanging under the beam had been swiped by some damned thief. If he found out who did it, he would make them pay dearly. If it was a woman, he'd make sure she couldn't get out of bed for 3 days. He would be going into the mountains for at least a few days, and if his luck was bad, probably a whole week. He had to stock up food for his wife and make sure the mother and daughter wouldn't go hungry again. On the way back to the village, he happened to run into his second sister-in-law, Yang Suwa. She had apparently just come back from visiting someone's home. Her face was full of the delight that followed gossip, wearing an overjoyed expression, clearly having just heard some juicy gossip. Wang Xiangdong didn't want to bother with her. This woman couldn't keep her mouth shut. As long as she knew about something, within 2 days the whole village would know too. But Yang Suihua came straight up to him, and the moment she saw a third brother, her eyes lit up at once. Seeing the carrying pole on his shoulders weighed down on both ends, she could tell he had bought quite a lot. She moved closer and took a curious look, which made her swallow hard on the spot. More than a dozen gene of meat and more than a dozen gene of flour. Goodness, what a lavish purchase. Yang Tsohua subconsciously tidied up her clothes and casually hitched up her undergarment, making herself look as alluring as possible. Third brother, buying so much meat? Yang Tsohua put on an enthusiastic look, her eyes seeming glued to that big chunk of meat, unable to move away. "The ribs I got from you yesterday got devoured by Dahu and Eru in no time. Those 2 little bastards. It's not like they've usually gone without food, but they acted like they hadn't eaten meat in months." Wang Xiangdong stopped and looked at his second sister-in-law. When she saw him looking at her, she subconsciously thrust out her chest a little. In the whole village, hers were the biggest. What man wouldn't covet them? For the sake of Wang Xiangdong's 2 liang of meat, she was really going all out. In times like these, if you don't make a little sacrifice, it's truly hard to live well. She had once heard that some educated young women sent down to the countryside, in order not to be stuck in the countryside living a hard life, often ran to the village chief's house in the middle of the night. As for what they went there to do, everyone naturally knew full well. So Yang Suehua felt that making a little sacrifice for a bite of meat was acceptable too. Third brother was still family. After all, good things shouldn't go to outsiders. However, Wang Xiangdong's words left her stunned on the spot. Without my permission, who allowed you to steal my family's meat? However you took it away, that's how you'll return it. And also, all that oil, salt, soy sauce, and vinegar you borrowed from my family before. I'll write up an IOU later and go to your house to collect it back. Second sister-in-law. Don't think that just because I'm easygoing, you can fleece me to death. Lastly, please be more polite to my wife from now on. And if I find out you're bullying her, I'll slap you for sure. You damned third brother. Have you forgotten how your second brother treated you back then? When you had nothing to eat. It was your second brother who gave you food. When you had no clothes to wear for the new year, it was still your second brother who brought clothes from home for you. Have you forgotten all that? You ungrateful wretch. Yang Suehua's shrewish nature showed itself. With her hands on her hips, she cursed Wang Xiangdong loudly. And here she had been thinking that good things shouldn't go to outsiders. Even if she let herself be ruined by others, she wouldn't let this ungrateful wretch have the benefit of it. Wang Xiangdong's face darkened, and he kept sneering. She still had the nerve to bring up those things. Didn't second sister-in-law feel ashamed? He was embarrassed for her. Do you take those leftover dishes and scraps your second brother gave you to eat, and those tattered old clothes you discarded, as some kind of enormous favor? Wang Xiangdong let out a scornful laugh and said, How about this? Tonight I'll send over the leftover bones from my house, along with the clothes we don't want anymore, and count it as repaying the favor you did us back then. You. Yang Suehua instantly lost her nerve. She had thought moral coercion could make the third brother compromise, but after not seeing him for a few days, he seemed like a different person. Her tone immediately softened. Leaning close to him, breathing sweetly, she said, Third brother, sister-in-law was just confused for a moment and spoke without thinking. They do say women with big breasts have no brains. Third brother, you're broad-minded. So just forgive your second sister-in-law. I don't have any other request. I just want to borrow 2 jin of meat from you so Dahu and Eru can satisfy their cravings. Wang Xiangdong's face turned cold. No. When his daughter Yining went over to second brother's house to visit, that bastard often bullied her, and when they were eating meat, the whole family would drive Yining out, terrified she might get even a bite. His wife had only told him this last night. He had never known about it before. If he had, with his bad temper, he would have torn second brother's house apart long ago. You still want to eat meat? Go eat shit. Wang Xiangdong didn't waste any more words and headed home with his shoulder pole. Yang Suehua refused to give up and lifted the load on the other end of the pole, only to see a scene so shocking she was speechless. Was that a box of bullets? Did the third brother have a gun? Thinking of something, Yang Suehua's voluptuous body couldn't help but tremble, and her face turned pale. Wang Xiangdong's face completely darkened. Get lost. Don't force me to slap you. After returning home, Wang Xiangdong put away the meat and flour. At this time, the village chief had also arranged for an electrician to come string wires and install electric lights. Seeing the meat and flour in his house, he was shocked. I say, Xiangdong, life's been pretty good for you lately, huh? First you're getting electricity installed, and now you're buying meat. What struck it rich? The village chief was an old man who liked carrying a tobacco pipe and taking a couple of puffs whenever he had nothing to do. When he saw the more than 10 jin of meat Wang Xiangdong had, his old eyes practically lit up. In Yushitan, every single household could go months without even touching a bit of meat. In those famine years, every family tightened their belts to get by. Even the clothes on their backs were old and patched, and they couldn't bear to go to the supply and marketing cooperative to buy a piece of cloth and make a new outfit. Seeing so much meat all at once, it was hard not to covet it. Wang Xiangdong raised his brows and said, I got lucky. I went into the mountains a few days ago, dug up something valuable, and sold it for some money. The village chief suddenly understood. No wonder. He swallowed and gave up the idea of borrowing a bit of meat to satisfy his craving. This was something the man had brought back risking his life. And if he just opened his mouth and borrowed the meat away, that would be too shameless. In these deep mountains and old forests, there really were quite a few treasures, but anyone who dared go into the mountains was a tough one too, because countless dangers lurked there. Wolves roamed in packs, black bears wandered everywhere, and it was said there were even man-eating tigers that came out from time to time to patrol the mountains. After the electric lights were installed, Wang Xiangdong took 2 jin of meat to his eldest brother Wang Zhengwo's place. He would be gone for several days this trip, so he came over hoping his eldest brother could help keep an eye on things at home. When Wang Zhengwo and sister-in-law Li Yin saw the third brother show up carrying meat, before he could even speak, they hurriedly told him to take the meat back, thinking, What kind of life are you living, kid? One meal on the table and none for the next, and now you bring over 2 gene of meat. Most likely you've come to borrow money. Although he wanted to help his younger brother, given how third brother was, Wang Jiangwo was utterly disappointed and simply couldn't lend him any money. What would he lend it to him for? To take it gambling. With spare money like that, he'd be better off buying meat for himself to eat. Third brother, it's not that your sister-in-law is unwilling to help you. It's just that our family really doesn't have any spare money either. Although your elder brother goes to town every day to carry sacks for people and earn a bit of money, that's also his hard-earned money, saved up for your nephew's schooling. Usually, we can't bear to spend it. As soon as Wang Xiangdong heard this, he understood why his elder brother and sister-in-law looked so troubled. So they thought he had come to borrow money. He immediately said, "Big brother, sister-in-law, you've misunderstood. I'm not here to borrow money. I came to ask you to help look after my wife. I have something to take care of and need to be away for a few days." He didn't say he was going into the mountains. Otherwise, with his elder brother's temperament, he would definitely stop him. Wang Jingwo frowned and looked Wang Xiangdong up and down. Other than going to the gambling den, could this kid possibly have any other proper business? But seeing that he didn't seem to be lying, Wang Jingwo's expression softened. As long as third brother was willing to improve himself, turn over a new leaf, he was still willing to lend a hand however he could. An elder brother is like a father. After all, he was the eldest brother. All right, as long as you're not going off to do any profiteering, your sister-in-law and I will help keep an eye on things at home. You honestly, what am I supposed to say about you? You married a female educated youth from the city, such a beautiful wife, and yet you don't know how to cherish her. All day long, if you're not hitting her, you're cursing her. It's only because Lin Shui has such a gentle nature. If it were anyone else, this family would have fallen apart long ago. At the mention of his wife, Wang Xiangdong's face turned gentle. He swore that from now on he would treat her well. After saying goodbye and coming out from his elder brother's place, his elder brother chased after him as soon as he stepped out the door. While he was still puzzled, his elder brother stuffed 2 10-yuan notes into his hand. Third brother, as your elder brother, I don't have much to show for it. But as long as you stop gambling, everything can get better. Take this money. Big brother, I have money. Wang Xiangdong felt a warm glow in his heart. His elder brother's concern made his eyes redden, and he had no idea how many heavy sacks his elder brother must have carried for others to save up these 2 10-yuan notes. What money could you possibly have? Stop pretending in front of your big brother. All right, go on back. Wang Jiangwo gave his shoulder a hearty pat, then turned and went back in a carefree manner. Wang Xiangdong took a deep breath. Even though it was freezing cold, his heart felt warm at this moment. When he got home, his wife had already started stewing the meat. Following his instructions, she had stewed 3 gene of meat. Their daughter, Yinyin, was curiously staring at the electric light and asked in her childish voice, "Daddy, will this light really turn on?" Wang Xiangdong stroked her little head and said, "Of course. Come on, Daddy will show you. You just pull it like this." He pulled the hanging cord, and with a click, the light turned on. The adorable eyes of Yinyin instantly lit up with joy. Wow, 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 Daddy is amazing. Lin Shui brought the meat to the table. Looking at Wang Xiangdong doting on their daughter, her expression was gentle. Perhaps he really had changed. The look in someone's eyes when they dote on a person is impossible to hide. Lin Shui felt a slight joy and called the 2 of them to wash their hands and eat. While they were eating, Wang Xiangdong told his wife that he was going away for a few days and that she didn't need to worry about him. Lin Shui's heart skipped a beat. She lost all appetite for eating, looked at him cautiously, and softly asked what he was going to do. But when she saw him frown, she instantly became frightened, tears falling as she said aggrievedly, "Can't I just not ask?" He was always like this. Whenever he went out and left home, he never told her where he was going. If one day he died outside, she wouldn't even know. But she didn't dare say such words out loud. She was afraid that saying it would be inauspicious, anger him, and bring on a brutal beating. Wang Xiangdong hadn't wanted to tell his wife, but seeing her like this, he could only come clean. "Someone wants a 300-pound wild boar. I agreed to it, and I've already taken the deposit. Those 100 bullets are basically the deposit they gave me." He took a big bite of meat, swallowed, and said, "I'm going into the mountains tomorrow. Fast, it'll be 2 or 3 days. Slow, it'll be a week before I come back. Stay home and take good care of Yinyin. I've already bought meat and grain for you. You have to eat every day and can't be frugal. If I come back and see there's still meat left, I'll really beat you." He was afraid his wife would think about the days ahead and skimp on eating meat, so he could only give a little threat. Going by his wife's usual ways, it was really possible she would save all this meat and only take it out to eat during holidays or something. Both mother and daughter were severely malnourished. How could they not eat meat? As soon as Lin Shui heard he was going into the mountains, and to look for wild boars at that, her tears fell even harder like they cost nothing. Was a wild boar something an ordinary person could provoke? Not long ago it had even injured someone, which showed just how fierce it was. It's too dangerous. Can we not go? Return the deposit to them. At worst, I'll do a bit more handicraft work in the future and spend more carefully. We can still get by? Silly girl, don't worry. It's very dangerous for others, but for me it's no problem at all. Did you forget? I have a gun. If a wild boar sees me, all it can do is run. I can take it down easily. Lin Shui looked at him half believing, half doubting. Really? Wang Xiangdong wrapped an arm around her slender waist and said seriously, truer than precious. Feeling his wife's slim, soft waist, and then looking at that pretty face, Wang Xiangdong's throat became dry, and his breathing began to deepen as well. Such an intimate gesture made Lin Shui's heart race, and she unconsciously avoided Wang Xiangdong's burning gaze. Wang Xiangdong glanced at Yinin, who had already dozed off on her own, and whispered something in his wife's ear, making her little face quickly flush red. Her eyes shifting as she bit her lip and nodded gently. Having gotten her consent, Wang Xiangdong directly carried his wife back to the room. Very soon came Wang Xiangdong's beast-like panting and his wife's shy, suppressed responses. Wang Xiangdong entered the mountains before dawn. 100 bullets, plus 7 days' worth of rations. If he didn't run into a wild boar within 7 days, then he could only return the way he came. To his surprise, not long after entering the mountains, that white fox was by the roadside, as if it had known in advance he was going into the mountains. Wang Xiangdong greeted it, then headed deeper into the mountains by himself. Interestingly, this fox didn't seem afraid of him at all. It followed him the whole way. When he stopped, it stopped too. Wang Xiangdong thought for a moment and asked, "You want to follow me hunting?" The white fox proudly lifted its chin. He couldn't be bothered with this thing and spotted a pheasant. Promised to offer it a pheasant while hunting, then hit it with one shot and told it to go pick it up. But this thing was very haughty and didn't move. Wang Xiangdong was both annoyed and amused and didn't argue with it. Picked up the pheasant and placed it in front of it. Eat, and go home when you're done. This time the target is a wild boar. And it has to be an adult wild boar, a 300-pound kind. Adult wild boars have keen senses of smell and quick reactions. With the white fox pestering around at his side, it would be easy to get discovered, so he could only politely ask this lord to leave. Wang Xiangdong ate his dry rations on the spot. The white fox, meanwhile, started feasting heartily. When it ate happily, it would even let out satisfied chuckling sounds, which in the empty mountain forest was honestly a bit frightening. Luckily, Wang Xiangdong was bold. He only glanced at it and paid it no more mind. In his heart, his evaluation of this fox rose a few more points. Could it really have become a spirit? But that had nothing to do with him. As long as they didn't come to trouble him, everyone could mind their own business and live in peace. After finishing his rations, he continued on his way. According to his memory, wild boars often appeared around Ganling. It was more than 50 kilometers from here. In his previous life, during training in the Special Operations Unit, he could do a 50-kilometer cross-country run in the wild in 5 hours. His stamina was excellent, among the very best in the unit at the time. But now it would take most of the day to get there, for one thing, because the environmental conditions were different. Mountains, forest, and snow-covered ground, with heavy snow burying the route. And in many places, if he didn't find the right footing, it would be easy to step into empty space. Cross-country running in the snow was also not feasible. Running would make him lose even more heat, and without enough heat replenishment, it would be easy to get hypothermia. This body's physical condition also wouldn't allow it. After being reborn, he found that his overall strength was too weak. However, he was confident that as long as he practiced diligently, his stamina and all aspects of his physical fitness could improve. Most importantly, he needed to preserve his strength. The mountains and forests were full of unknown dangers. Going this deep in this time was practically risking his life on a gamble. What he told his wife last night, that dealing with wild boars would be easy, was only to reassure her. This trip was extremely dangerous. Squeak, squeak. The white fox, having finished the pheasant, followed him again. Seeing that he couldn't drive it away, Wang Xiangdong couldn't be bothered to pay it any more attention. He only told it that he was going to hunt wild boars, which was very dangerous, and with its tiny frame, it couldn't withstand even a single charge from a wild boar. The white fox said nothing and simply followed silently. And so, one man, one fox, and one rifle made their way through the vast snowy mountain forest. As nightfall approached, they finally reached Ganling. Only, by this time the wild boars should already be resting, so he could only wait until tomorrow when they came out to forage before looking for them. He wasn't crazy enough to go poking into a wild boar den. He found a wind-sheltered spot at the foot of a mountain and started a fire to roast meat. On the way, he had caught a wild rabbit, nice and plump. Tonight, he wouldn't have to eat that hard-to-swallow dry ration again. While he was dressing the rabbit and setting it up to roast, the fox sat quietly beside him watching, drool streaming from its mouth. Wang Xiangdong laughed. He hadn't expected it to be such a foodie. Soon the aroma of roast meat drifted out. Unfortunately, there was no cumin or chili pepper, otherwise it really would have been delicious. Having lived through hard times, he wasn't picky about food. So he tore off a large piece of rabbit for the long-waiting fox and then began eating in big mouthfuls himself. As the hot rabbit meat went down, his body and mind were satisfied, and warmth spread through him. The fox ate with its eyes narrowed, looking utterly content. Listen, now that you've eaten my roast meat, you're one of my people from now on. No, that's not right. You're not a person. Anyway, from now on, you're mine. And in all actions you have to follow orders, understand? Wang Xiangdong took the opportunity to tempt the fox with roast meat, making it behave obediently from now on, or else there would be no roast meat for it. Who knew the white fox only rolled its eyes at him, as if saying, "You think one meal of roast meat is enough to buy me off? Keep dreaming." Wang Xiangdong laughed helplessly. It really had become a spirit. After filling his stomach, Wang Xiangdong prepared to rest. The plastic sheet he carried with him was made into a simple sleeping bag, which could keep his clothes from getting damp while he slept and prevent him from catching a chill. Before going to sleep, he set up a simple trip trap at the cave entrance. As long as something approached, it would be triggered and warn him. At the same time, he placed the hunting shotgun where he could reach it at a touch, so that the moment he noticed anything wrong, he could grab the shotgun to save his life. He slept until dawn. The trip trap he had set was still there, which meant nothing had come by last night. His luck was not bad. As for that white fox, who knew where it had curled up to sleep last night, he casually grabbed a handful of snow and chewed it in his mouth, treating it as washing up. Just as he was about to set off to look for wild boars, the white fox appeared right on time. The white fox bared its teeth at him in a grin, chuckling in a chilling way. Wang Xiangdong didn't pay it much mind at first, but soon the hair on the back of his neck stood up, because then he heard another low sound. Humfumfurlu. Wang Xiangdong's scalp went numb. It was a wild boar. This thing had brought a wild boar over, and it was a super huge one weighing close to 400 gene. Looking at that slowly approaching wild boar, Wang Xiangdong felt like the sky was falling. But that white fox was still wearing a flattering smile, as if asking for credit. He really wanted to blow its brains out with one shot. At that moment, the wild boar also noticed him. Their eyes met, and both sides fell silent. Wang Xiangdong's finger quietly moved onto the trigger, doing his best to keep his breathing steady and remain absolutely calm. The wild boar suddenly let out a roar and launched an attack on the human. Clearly, the appearance of a human made it furious. Wang Xiangdong raised his hand and fired. Bang! The gunshot echoed through the mountains and woods, startling a bunch of wild animals. A rabbit that was taking a crap was so frightened it jolted and ran back into its burrow. But Wang Xiangdong had no mind to care about any of that. At this moment, his heart sank. He had hit it, but the bad news was, it hadn't broken through its defense. The wild boar was as if nothing had happened, not even slowing down as it charged straight at Wang Xiangdong head-on. Those sharp tusks were bound to rip open his belly. He could only retreat quickly, dodging the wild boar's fatal blow. He rolled on the ground in a sorry state. When he looked up, he met the white fox's gaze. The latter looked puzzled, as if saying, "Why are you so weak?" Wang Xiangdong cursed under his breath, not daring to think too much, and chambered another round. This time he aimed at the wild boar's eyeball and blew it out directly. Blood splattered everywhere. This also completely aroused the wild boar's beastly nature, sending it into a frenzied, charging mode. Wang Xiangdong kept his mind calm and his hands steady. At the very last moment before the boar slammed into him, he chambered another round again. This time he didn't aim, just went by instinct and flicked his arm as he pulled the trigger. Bang! The wild boar's other eye burst on cue. However, the next second, Wang Xiangdong suddenly stepped into empty air. His whole body lost balance and fell, hitting the ground hard. His head slammed into something solid, and he passed out on the spot. Wang Xiangdong had no idea how long he was unconscious. When he woke up, it was already dark. Warmth came from his face. He weakly opened his eyes and found the white fox licking his face, apparently trying hard to wake him up. Wang Xiangdong shoved it away in disgust. Other than getting his face covered in saliva, what else could it do? The snow had almost buried him completely. Fortunately, where he had landed was a thick patch of weeds, which saved him from severe hypothermia. He looked up at the place he had fallen from. It had to be about 2 stories high. The good news was that he wasn't dead. The bad news was that his foot was injured and he couldn't move. The bones in his toes were fractured and had to be treated as soon as possible, otherwise there was a risk of amputation. He was ruthless enough. Biting down on a tree branch, he forcefully set it straight, breaking out in a cold sweat from the pain. Back when he was in the Special Forces, this was how they handled injuries in emergencies too. The advantage was that during subsequent treatment, there would be no need for amputation. The white fox ran off, but before long, it came back carrying some herbs for him. Wang Xiangdong glanced at them in confusion, then was instantly shocked. They were clearly medicinal herbs effective for treating bruises and sprains, dispelling blood stasis, and reducing swelling. Had this thing really become a spirit? The white fox gave him a proud glance, then immediately darted back into the forest. Before long, it came back with a bewildered rabbit in its mouth, signaling for him to roast the meat. "Rabbit, you're so noble, aren't you?" Wang Xiangdong didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He was injured, and this thing was still thinking about eating, but he was hungry too, so he casually cleaned the rabbit. When it came time to start the fire, the man and the fox stared at each other with big eyes. In the end, the white fox lost and reluctantly went to fetch some dry branches. They were set up to make a fire, and the meat started roasting. The white fox just quietly squatted nearby, staring at the roast meat without blinking, occasionally glancing at Wang Xiangdong, impatience flashing in its eyes, as if saying that even roasting meat takes this long, so annoying. As Wang Xiangdong roasted the meat, he wondered what his wife was doing at this moment. Whenever he thought of his wife and daughter, he had endless strength. After eating his fill, Wang Xiangdong began looking for the way up. He had to hurry and drag that wild boar back. If it ended up benefiting a passing wolf pack, that would be a huge loss. After going up and finding the wild boar's corpse, luckily it had not yet been discovered by other beasts. Wang Xiangdong quickly made a simple sled, with the wild boar placed on it. Pulling it did not take too much effort. A journey of more than 50 kilometers, while also dragging a 300-gene wild boar, was an extreme test of Wang Xiangdong's stamina. Fortunately, he had both dry rations and meat. He could replenish himself in time. Home. Wang Xiangdong cheered himself on. With this wild boar, the money to build a house was secured. When he got back, he would have his elder brother help find people to build a new house. There were still 2 months until the new year. He would strive to move in with his wife before the year ended. This was a man's promise to his woman. Wang Xiangdong set off limping as he pulled the sled, while the white fox lay on the sled dozing. If it weren't for the fact that it had saved his life, Wang Xiangdong would have long since told it to get off and walk on its own. After several hours of arduous trekking, he was finally about to leave the forest. Wang Xiangdong let out a sigh of relief. Having been reborn, this body had not yet adapted to such high-intensity exertion, and now it was starting to give out. At that moment, however, a gunshot rang out, breaking the forest silence. Wang Xiangdong's expression darkened. Judging by the sound, it was a Wangba box, this thing being compact and convenient, with an effective range of 50 meters and a magazine capacity of 8 rounds. Anyone using this kind of gun was definitely not a hunter. Then he heard a woman's voice crying for help, the sound coming closer and closer. And soon, by the moonlight, he could make out a bedraggled figure running toward him. The person wore a furry hat and a dark green army coat. "Comrade, comrade, save me." By the time Lu Hongmei ran up to Wang Xiangdong, she was already completely exhausted. She introduced herself, saying she was an educated youth from Hongxing Commune. Driven by hunger and left with no other choice, she had entered the mountains with a group of friends, planning to hunt some game to fill their stomachs. Who would have thought that after entering the mountains, they got lost? The white snow had covered every trace, and they could not find the way back even by nightfall. And just then they ran into a wolf pack. 3 of her friends were still surrounded by the wolves, and she begged Wang Xiangdong to help save them. Wang Xiangdong frowned. Her friends had guns, so why were they still surrounded? Wang Xiangdong had no choice but to doubt whether she was telling the truth. Having lived 2 lifetimes, how could he trust others so easily? Seeing Wang Xiangdong hesitate, a trace of resolve flashed in Lu Hongmei's eyes, and she directly undid her buttons, revealing that milky white skin before Wang Xiangdong. "Comrade, as long as you agree to save them, I'm willing to give my body to you. Please,